One, two, three.
Wonderful.
1, 2. this conversation and an introduction of sorts to Aysha Pennerman. And Aysha is here with us as part of a partnership with Midtown Alliance, and we're so excited for that partnership to express in the community the power, in this case, of art. And I was sharing an exchange with one of our vestry members who's very excited about this partnership, and talking about how churches could have decided to have built, and some of them do, sort of box-like buildings, and not gone to the trouble and expense of stained glass windows in our tradition and beautiful spires. Yet we do that in an attempt so that we might cast our gaze heavenwards. Or actually, in this day and age, perhaps we're just wanting to cast our gaze upwards from whatever's in our hand to see the glory of God and the person right across the 3 feet from us. I'm going to share a few words about Aysha so you can get to know her, but I'll offer a shameless plug, not to show up unannounced perhaps, but if you go down North Avenue, you'll be able to see Aysha's studio, which is a studio for one of the 2 artists in residence that we have, and you can't miss it because it's got this wonderful Midtown Alliance logo in the colors of the rainbow, and there may be 1 or 2 bits of pink there as well. So we've enlivened our streetscape to enliven our hearts. And if you drive around, or particularly if you walk around Midtown, you'll see how important public art is, and these partnerships are. You'll see these partnerships for Hearts for the Arts all over Midtown. And it just is and I do live in Midtown, I do work in Midtown. I guess you can say I'm a believer in Midtown, but it is a phenomenal neighborhood to live in and to work in and to celebrate life in. And I give thanks for our long-term partnership and being part of Midtown Alliance and the work that they have done in this part of Atlanta that truly is, it's a place of renaissance, and we give thanks for that. So let me share about Aysha. So Atlanta-based artist, and of course one of our new artists in residence here at All Saints. Combining more than 10 years as a graphic design artist with her paintings on murals and canvases, Aysha's current work explores silhouettes or multi-toned monochromatic faces with acrylic paint in combination of textures and patterns created with thick acrylic mediums. Aysha has a long history of creating pieces that make people proud of who they are and where they're from. While in college, Aysha served as the design editor for Georgia State University's newspaper, The Signal, and designed books and other graphics for the Apex Museum. After graduating with a BA in Fine Arts from Georgia State and working in the corporate world, God bless you, Aysha transitioned, there's nothing wrong with the corporate world, of course, my apologies, transitioned to full-time freelancing as an artist. My godfather worked throughout his career as an actor, freelancing. So thanks be to God for your courage to do that, because the world needs artists, and we give thanks for your art. And launched Impactful Brush, a non-profit organization with a mission to help beautify communities in need through community-based murals that reflect the community's voice. What a beautiful mission that is. She has incorporated youth and other community members in her public art projects, providing art accessibility and an opportunity to learn how community service can be accomplished creatively and meaningfully. Having completed a number of mural projects across the city, drumroll, Aysha is currently working with All Saints Arts Committee in creating a mural here on our block. More details about which will follow in due course, which means not today, but it will be. We're going to share loud and proud about all of that so you can hear more about that. But I wonder if you could join with me in welcoming Aysha here to All Saints. So I want to offer a little bit of a framework for this conversation about art and faith. just briefly, but to give us a sense of our bearings as part of 2,000 then plus thousands of years of religious tradition. So art has been an integral it's been integral to the expression of the life of faith from the birth of Christianity and, of course, in Judaism and other faith traditions that predate the church. So biblical scholars, I don't know if you knew this, biblical scholars believe that one of the oldest, perhaps the oldest passage in the Bible is a piece of art, a song. The Song of Miriam, found in the book of Exodus, chapter 15, verses 20 to 21. And it's the song that Miriam sings, let's just put it this way, after bad things happen to the Egyptians who've been chasing them, the Red Sea collapses in upon them, and the freed slaves of the Hebrew people, she leads them in this song. So just to think about that for a second, it is a woman's voice who is the first to speak in the biblical record in terms of when we put it together. Just wonder about that. So dating back around 12,000 years, believed to have been part of a distinct women's song tradition accompanied by hand drum and dance. So not just one art form, but art forms, as they often do, coming together, this beautiful collision, if you like. So if we think about the stories of Scripture, performance and visual art have been and are essential elements. David played the harp to soothe the troubled King Saul's spirit. He later danced before the ark, one of my favorite passages. The daughter of Saul despised him in his heart. I guess his dancing was really bad, but he danced in front of the ark as the ark was led into Jerusalem. That was just my humor. His dancing, of course, was glorious, but she wasn't quite sure that that was befitting of a king. Yet David's dancing reveals what kingship really is, rejoicing in the joy of the Lord. Song was central to the life of the people of Israel in their worship as well as their literature. Two major collections of songs in the Psalms, of course, and the Song of Solomon, for example. The Ark of the Covenant, the tent tabernacle which held the Ark, and the Jerusalem temple were adorned with extraordinary works of art. And we might even see the prophetic action of some of the prophets we find in the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament as performance art, such as Isaiah walking around partially nude. I once preached a sermon at Cambridge about that, because I didn't quite get away with it. But anyway, this is a story about, for 3 years, barefoot for 3 years. After that, he said, what do you really want? We're going to do it. Please stop. And then Jeremiah creating and wearing a yoke which was destroyed by another prophet to symbolize the breaking of the yoke of the king of Babylon. Performance art as prophecy. So 2,000 years since the Bible was written, art has been central to the life of faith of individuals and communities. All of this to say, why on earth would we be talking about art and faith today, or art as sacred existence? We are in good company as we explore the power of art in the life of faith. So I want to begin with that framework. It's like this is very much in our bailiwick, in our sort of our area of life as people of faith. I'd love to ask some questions about the relationship. I wonder if you could tell us about the relationship between your art and your faith.
Testing.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Thank you. That was very beautiful. For me, where art and faith is connected is essentially, so in my work, it's not necessarily obvious of my faith, but it's woven in different ways. For me, the foundation for me is knowing that God was the first creative. You know, that was one of the first characteristics that was revealed in the Bible. Genesis chapter 1, verses 1, God created. So that was one of the first characteristics of him being creative. And so that's like the foundation for me, is knowing that, okay, just because my work may not necessarily have, you know, a cross or Jesus or an angel, it's still intentionally woven in. An example of that is through portraits. Sometimes that's through animals. Sometimes that's through patterns and line work in my pieces. An example of that is over here by the mirror. This line work is an example of the uniqueness that we all have in just like, for example, fingerprints. No one person on this earth has the same print And that's really fascinating to me. And so I like that idea. I like to use and pull those patterns and those lines and woven that into my portraits, in my murals, in my ceramics. But it's just a reminder of the uniqueness that we all have.
I love that.
Thank you.
And actually, was there a moment in your life, I'm not sure if it was there was a kind of almost an epiphany moment, or if it was a progression, when you first realized the significance of art in your faith journey?
So I've been drawing since I was a little girl. I love drawing, but it wasn't until my adulthood where I really came to that realization of that connection between my faith and my art. It really, I'll tell a quick story of where the light bulb went off for me. When I was in the corporate world, they heard and found out that I could paint, and so they would want me to lead these community projects. So each year they would do a service day project where the whole office will go in with a partner or a nonprofit to do a community project. Sometimes that was through yard work or painting or just really just beautifying that space. And so for a couple years, I was in charge of facilitating the mural portion of those projects. And so one of the last projects that I worked on was of this, it was this old prison that they transformed into a men's temporary shelter. And it was through the Evolution Center. So just imagine going into this facility, it still gave like prison vibes, right? You still saw the prison bars and these stark white walls, and it just was really depressing. And so we were tasked with adding color to the space. And so we did about 3 or 4 murals in this facility. And one of the murals that I worked on was in this big space where the men's bunk beds were. So they slept in this area, but there's this huge wall. It was maybe like 20, 30 feet wide by 10 feet high. And I created this sunrise with this phoenix as a representation of hope. And while I was prepping this wall, days before the office was going to come and help paint it, there was a man that was in his bunk bed that was closest to the wall, and I just would hear him grumbling and just in pain and complaining, and just you can hear the sorrow in his voice. The day we finished the mural, the same guy was like, wow, every day I get to wake up to a sunrise. And you can just hear the shift and the hope in his voice. And that was where the light bulb went off for me, is realizing that I can use art as a tool to love on others, like loving our neighbors. And so then it became this, okay, this is my way, this is part of my purpose in impacting and really just essentially being a light to the world through my art.
I love that.
Thank you.
And I'm going to share this, just as part of my healing. My first traumatic art story at the age of 5, and I was. Thanks be to God, the English education system, at that point public school, as in state school, government school, provided for art class. And I was tasked, as we all were, to draw a witch. English are fascinated in witches, I don't know why. And so I was never particularly good at sort of colouring in the lines, and so I decided to take the paper and paint it all black. Because then I could paint the witch in a sort of different colour on top, and I thought this is very logical. And lo and behold, my teacher, whose name and telephone number I won't give you, but my teacher brought me to the front and said, "Look at what Simon has done." She essentially sort of, it was an act of sort of, she didn't mean to shame me, but I think that certainly was the effect. And I was convinced, well, maybe I won't be winning the whatever Turner Prize, whatever it would be for art. But I didn't stop believing, thankfully. And I had another art form where my experience was the complete opposite, and that was the art form of singing. And so I'd had this outlet. So maybe you can leave me with the horror stories. But for you, I'm trusting there was somebody who was a kind of early North Star for you that said, you know what, there may be something in me that needs to be expressed. Because I'm looking out at a whole room here of artists. Some of them don't know it yet. Maybe all of you do, but perhaps 1 or 2 of you don't. So who was it? Was there a North Star in your life?
So I can't think of a particular mentor in mind, but I would say that I did have a strong community that supported me. My parents, for example, that always supported my art and creativity. I think in current day, it's my husband. He's been a big encouragement for me, because prior to really just going full time as an artist, I'm still very hard on myself when it comes to art, not feeling good enough, not feeling like a good enough artist, or even not a good enough Christian. But I think he would always combat those negative statements and thoughts with positive ones, just to encourage me. And so that's always been, as I am a light in spaces with art, he is a light in the household for me, to continue to go out there and create and help and impact communities.
I love how personal this is, and how in the very personal nature of art, and how you feel about yourself, the power of solidarity.
Yeah.
And that's a great lesson for all of us, that there may be, that as personal as it will feel to express ourselves from a deep interior place, that may have a chance of having an outlet, of being seen by others because of somebody else's solidarity and belief. So it's very personal, and particularly thinking about murals, very public. I mean, it's one thing that if I might lock a door and paint something and then put it in a safe. Nobody will ever see it. You do some art and put it on a wall. Everybody's going to see it. I don't know if maybe artwork, murals and sermons are the same. Everybody has an opinion once you've got it out there. So I wanted to share a story from a couple of years ago, because it's such a powerful example of art in the public space. My family and I had a chance to visit Israel 2 years ago, and visit Bethlehem, where you'll find, previous to when my wife Monica was there 20 years earlier, now there is a separation barrier, which is a startling statistic. When it is completed, it'll run for 442 miles. That's some wall across the West Bank. And the wall is 25 to 30 feet high in places, and essentially has cut Palestinian communities in two. Essentially sort of just like clean in two in some cases, on either side. And because of its notoriety, it's also become an open-air art gallery. Famously adorned by the British artist, I don't know if you know the British artist Banksy. So Banksy owns the walled-off hotel in Bethlehem, and if you look on their website, its selling point is the worst view of any hotel in the world. That's how they sell it, because it is literally about 8 to 10 feet from the wall. You could trip over leaving the lobby and put your hand on the wall, pretty much. And it's been joined by others offering sort of art as a form of sacred resistance. And what you'll see is images of, some of the most striking images that we saw were images of children doing everyday things, praying, playing musical instruments, expressing art, and other things that you might imagine children doing. But there's somebody doing a dance, but rather than a ribbon that she's dancing with, it's barbed wire. And her prayers, if you're a Roman Catholic, rather than your hands wrapped in prayer beads, wrapped in barbed wire. It's the juxtaposition that kind of brings you up short, of course intentionally. There's a lot more sort of, there's political statements on there, there's all sorts. And I wondered just if you could help us think about, and I want to just sort of offer a sense of what it might mean to have art be sacred resistance that is guided by, so resistance in the sense of something positive, resistance guided by the principles of justice and love. What would it look like to resist, guided by those life-giving principles? How significant has public visual art been as a form of resistance in this American context, whether that is today or we go back in the last several decades?
I think art has a beautiful, public art specifically, public art and street art has a beautiful way of discussing hard topics. So using Banksy, for example, he's known to use this playful imagery to talk about hard topics, where he critiques like politics and society and wars. And so I think that's a perfect example that is also here in America of bringing light to certain issues and certain injustices that may often be ignored or turned away from if it was displayed in a different way. Like, for example, if it was on the news or if it was, an article or however, but when it's in a form of art, it makes it more digestible, essentially. It gives it more, it's more accessible to people who may not know what's going on in that space or whatever that topic may be. I think it's also, so that's a form of resistance, right? And just educating the community and making it accessible and digestible. I also think it's another form of resistance is bringing communities together. Mm-hmm. So there's pieces where it does bring solidarity and community together and form that unity versus causing division where chaos runs, right? I think it's also a form of, so what I said, education, bring people together. It's a form of acknowledging the history of a space. For some areas in Atlanta, for example, there's a lot of gentrification and there's a lot of displacement that's happening. And so there's some works of art that will discuss what was here prior, to this gentrification, and just bringing acknowledgement to what was there and respecting that as the city progresses, right? And so these are all different forms of resistance. And there's so many examples, beautiful examples throughout the city of Atlanta, but also throughout, the country.
Mm. My wife and I were cycling back from Buckhead yesterday for a meeting, and we went along the Beltline. Mm-hmm. And yesterday there were graffiti artists painting, creating art on the sort of in the underpasses, and I'm always struck when I drive around. There are some sort of, they feel like titans, but of course the person you see, John Lewis, you see Dr. King. Yeah. Do you have a sense in which that art helps us keep people on our mind? There's sort of sharing this common memory, because I love that idea of people that may be forgotten. And we think we won't forget Dr. King, and we think we won't forget John Lewis. Yeah. Yet as a pastor, I know how forgetful human nature is. Yeah. Is there any artwork that you have done, and I'd be very curious, because you've got these beautiful, beautiful pieces of art right here, with some couple of beautiful human beings that you might want to share about. I'm just curious of that role of how it helps us remember one another.
So there's a few examples, but I guess I'll give one, as I mentioned about displacement, right? There was a mural that I worked on a few years ago in Reynoldstown. The mural was called The Soul of Reynoldstown. And this is an area where there is a lot of gentrification and there is a lot of Black displacement that is happening. And so I worked with the Reynoldstown Improvement League, but I also collaborated with some of the legacy residents that still lived in that area, just to hear more about the history of Reynoldstown, what it was, what it is to them, what sense do they want to continue to push forward, for the future generations or people that are there today. And so that was an example of, what I didn't know, but learned through this project, was that Reynoldstown was named after an ex-slave named Madison Reynolds. Not a lot of people in this neighborhood knew that. And so I thought that was really important information to display on the mural, of just acknowledging the past. I also included like some historical architectural forms within the piece, but then I also wanted to create this bridge of acknowledging the past, but also, acknowledging the present and the future. And so in the foreground, after talking to some of the legacy residents, I wanted to put them on the mural. But then I also talked walked around and took pictures of people that were living there today. And so I painted them in the foreground. And then I also invited the community to come out and paint this mural with me. One, as a form of bringing people together, but also as a way to educate the community on just where they live. And so I think that was an example for me of just acknowledging what was here and where we're going, but just to remember, as the city, as I said, progresses and builds.
I know one of the things that we talked about with Midtown Alliance as we were imagining welcoming artists and residents on the blocks, the possibility of joining our mission for healing and hope at Covenant Community, for example, and having opportunities for art to be a way of healing. I love the description you had in remembering where somebody would wake up and now I get to see a sunrise in a place that was sort of, if you like, bereft of light. Have there ever been times where you've worked with a partner or somebody else who's actually been partaking in the art creation and you've watched that sort of, either you've just seen how empowering it's been for that individual or healing or just any of those sort of, just the power of art to lift us up?
So I think there's, okay, I'm gonna give, this is a program, but I think through this program, beautiful things are happening. So I was a part of this cohort last year called, it's through Atlanta Regional Commission, and it's this community design program where they bring together artists, designers, architects, planners, local individuals from local government, community leaders, and we're part of this cohort together, and we have to partner with an organization or a nonprofit and really listen to them to hear what are your pain points and issues that they're facing as a community or as an organization. And I think this is really a cool example of using art as the foundation to solve problems. And so we had to come up with projects to solve their problems with art. And so one of the examples was, and some of these issues can range from like mobility and justice to food scarcities to just different issues, right? And so that cohort was really powerful to me, and just seeing, and okay, I don't know how much time I have, but I'll give a quick. One of the examples was one of the projects that we worked on was with the Village Skate Park. Which is, I think, is on near, what road is that? Donnelly Howell, David Abernathy? I can't remember. But it's over there, sort of kind of like West Midtown-ish area, Bankhead. It's kind of going towards Bankhead, and one of the, unfortunately, with the Beltline moving in, sometimes people are getting displaced, as I mentioned. And so this particular skate park was, one of their concerns was they don't know what's to come, once the Beltline is constructed right there. And so we wanted to, and a lot of people doesn't even know that this Village Skate Park was here and all the community work that they're doing for the community. And so we used art. We made these sculptural art pieces that has their signage on there that we displayed on the street so people can see them. We put food planters right there that's connected with this sculpture as a form of, if anybody wants to walk by and clip food, they could. And it was a way to just bring awareness to, hey, we're here. We want to be seen, we want to be heard. And through that came conversations where they sat down at the table with the Beltline to discuss what a partnership could look like. And so I thought that was a really great example of using art as a light to at least start the conversation.
I think it's Primo Levi who said everybody needs a witness. And in so many ways, one of the vocations of the church is to bear witness to the fullness of humanity. I've got one more question I want to ask you, and then we'll see if we have a little time for questions from the floor. But before we do that, I want you now to tell us about these two wonderful human beings and these two pieces of art.
So these are my sons. there are two here. My oldest is also in this one, but this is a younger version of him. And the same two guys are over there on the mural too. One of the inspirations for me is just daily life, right? As a mom, seeing my sons grow up.